Good evening. Welcome to the Plan Commission meeting, City of Marshfield, Tuesday, May 20th, in the council chambers. Call to order.
Roll call. Yes, we have Mayor T-Strike here.
Here.
Councilmember O'Reilly.
Here.
Commissioner Bernardi.
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioners Meyer, Frederick, and Caprillion are not here today, but we do have a quorum.
Yes, thank you. And we are removing items number 13 and number 14. We will not be discussing them tonight because we need more folks in the discussion for these two items. So we'll be taking those two items out of the agenda for this evening. Approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve.
Alderman O'Reilly approves the agenda.
Second.
Second by Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Mitchell, listen to me. Commissioner Mitchell, boy, wow. Oh boy, you graduated right away in your first term. Well, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And as the 3A item, we'd like to welcome our new member, Jocelyn Mitchell.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, welcome to our committee.
Thank you.
And you'll learn a lot. And I know that you're going to do great. Absolutely. So thank you for agreeing to be on this commission committee. Boy, oh boy, that's a tough one. Okay, I'm going to stop now. Approval of minutes, March 18th, 2025 and April 15th, 2025 meetings.
Motion to approve.
Second. Approved by Alderman and second by Jake. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, identify possible conflicts of interest. Please be advised per City Policy 3.340 that any member of this body shall declare a conflict if they have an interest, financial or otherwise direct or indirect, or engage in a business or transaction or professional activity, or incur an obligation of any nature that is in conflict with the proper discharge of the body's official duties. Seeing no conflicts, we'll go on to item 6, citizen comments. Citizen comments. Third time citizen comments. Seeing no citizen comments, we'll go on to item 7. Conditional use permit request by Jonathan Altman for an exception to section 18-106 fencing standards for the zoning code to allow for the construction of a garden fence located in the front yard and for exceptions to the height and setback requirements for the property located at 1107 West 7th Street, parcel 33-02214A. Presenter Bryce Hembrook, planner.
Thank you, Mayor. So the subject property is located on West 7th Street. So it is a 1.5, 2 blocks to the east of Columbus Catholic. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I was getting feedback. The subject parcel is approximately 0.27 acres and is located on the north side of 7th Street. So the applicant is looking to construct a 6-foot fence in the front yard in order to enclose their garden. So you will see here on the left side, it shows the proposed fence area. And on the right shows the proposed fence. Now, this isn't the exact fence, but generally this is what they're looking to place. I was told that it would be 6 feet or less, and then it would have that open wiring. So typically in the front yard, typically in Marshfield's requirements, you would have to have an open fence in the front yard and typically up to 4 feet. But in this case, the fence code, you can get an exception for the height. So let me just kind of go back here. So according to the applicant's narrative, they built garden beds in the backyard when they first moved in, but then realized that the shade from the trees led to a lack of sunlight for the garden. The applicant recently built garden beds in the front yard, which allowed for more sunlight. But as a result of this, they found that animals have been, attracted to the garden. And so they've tried to place some small temporary fencing, as you can see there, to try to detract the animals. Now they're looking to they're proposing to construct a permanent fence structure in the front yard. One of the reasons why they are proposing so I'll go back here for a second on the slide. So they are proposing to go up to the property line along the right-of-way as well as the side property line. And so one of the reasons why they are proposing that is because, I'm sorry, my screen kind of jumped around. The applicant stated that one of the reasons he's proposing the fence to be located up to the property line is because he has an in-ground plumbing, running from two 275-gallon rain barrels in the back of the house to the garden. So if he were to build the fence really in any other location in the front, he would have to rework that water system and potentially relocate the garden again. So that was one of the reasons for it being proposed in the location that it is. So in the staff report, I provided more detailed information, but essentially in the zoning code, any exceptions to the fence code can be granted through a conditional use permit, which requires review by the Plan Commission and a recommendation, and then the Common Council grants either final approval or denial. So usually a fence that encompasses a garden is permitted without a permit. But it has to meet certain criteria. One of the criteria is that it can't be in the provided front yard. In this case, it is. And it also would have to be set back of at least 5 feet from all property lines. And in this case, they would be within 5 feet along 2 different property lines. So they would need exceptions for those 2 requirements. I also included some other background information of other requirements that are typical but not necessarily required for garden fences. So like I mentioned before, typically fences in the front yard should be open and not solid. So typically you wouldn't have the 6-foot vinyl fencing that blocks off the whole view from the street. In this case, they're proposing, more of an open fence concept. And then, I just kind of made a note that the garden itself would be allowed in the front yard, but then any, fencing encompassing a garden would not be allowed in that front yard without an exception through Plan Commission and Common Council. So overall, there's really not a mention of this in the comprehensive plan. I don't think it really has a negative impact on the surrounding area. They can have a garden in the front yard. So adding the fence that's open, to me, it doesn't seem like a drastic change. But that is, just my opinion on that. So with that, the staff recommendation would be to approve the request with the following conditions and exceptions. Number 1, the applicant is permitted to have a 6-foot or shorter open fence located in the front yard as presented on the site plan. Number 2, the extension or installation of garden fencing beyond what is shown on the site plan or with materials other than what was submitted will require additional Plan Commission and Common Council review. Number 3, the applicant is responsible for ensuring the fence is located entirely on the subject parcel and does not encroach into the public right-of-way or adjacent properties. Number 4, exceptions to the minimum fence setbacks are granted. The fence can be located up to, but not on, any property line. And number 5, minor adjustments to the site plan may be administratively approved, provided no other exceptions are required. And I believe the applicant is in attendance. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer those. If not, hopefully the applicant can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Bryce. A public hearing is now open. Anybody who wishes to talk in public hearing? Anybody needs to make comments in public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Are there any questions or comments for the applicant or for Bryce from the commission?
Yeah, I really like the idea, the fence that they had on the screen up here. Looks really nice. The water rain barrel system, great idea, and I can definitely see having a 6-foot fence there just to keep not only animals, but, people, people will mosey in the gardens if something looks attractive. So I don't see personally anything wrong with that. I think it looks great.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mayor Tischbeck,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Reilly,
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Yes.
motion is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck with it.
Next, municipal code amendment request by the city of Marshfield to consider a text amendment to section 18-158, public hearing to require public hearings for conditional use permits to be published as a class 2 notice to align with sanctuary requirements, presented by Bryce Hembrook, planner.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a change that should have happened about 8 years ago, back in 2017. 2017, the state statutes changed for public hearings and required a Class 2 public hearing notice. So before that, we were doing Class 1 notices, which were, allowed at the time. And since that change, we've done that internally. Staff has, published as Class 2 notices. So we've been following the statutes. We just never, officially codified that change. We were planning on doing that as a part of the zoning code updates that we were, we had a number of different changes that we were going to make, but due to staff turnover and staff availability, we kind of put that on hold. And as I was kind of going through looking at the public hearing requirements, I noticed that that was never officially changed. So I figured this would be a good time to update that. But just a little bit of background. So for a public hearing notice like the one that we just had for the fence, it would require a Class 2 notice, which means that we have to send the notice to the paper to have the paper post twice. So 2 different weekends. Usually it's 10 and 17 days before the meeting is when these notices are posted. So like I said, we've been following the statutes. We just didn't officially change it in our code. So I think that this is the right time to do so before we hit the decade mark. So that's really all that I have for that one. This does require this is a public hearing, but if there's any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Bryce. And now we'll go to public hearing. Public hearing is open. Any comments, questions? Public hearing is open. Any comments, questions? Public hearing is closed. And anybody on the commission would like to make a comment or a question? Now would be the time to do it.
I have a question regarding this. So it says newspaper, but do they also update it on their website? Or
So no,
like
we
the
don't.
city's Facebook page or anything?
I think it's more,
So
go ahead, Bryce.
yeah, so in terms of the requirement in the code, it would just be the newspaper. That's what the statutory requirement is. We don't necessarily, to my knowledge, we don't necessarily post about the public hearing, except for we include it on our agenda. So on our agenda tonight, you'll see public hearing required underneath. That's kind of how we've done in the past. Steve, I don't know if we've had like Tom Laux, put it anywhere on the website, or if Natalie has, but it's not a requirement through statutes, but it's something that the city could consider if that were, something that you guys would want to do. So Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we have an updated fee schedule, the cost of applying for a conditional use permit or a rezoning or whatever, but we don't put the number of times it's published in the paper. That's really just when the applicant calls and they're told how the process will go and when they need to have their application in by. But as Bryce was saying, we've already had that in place already. I mean, we've done the Class 2 notice. Our code just hasn't said that. So there's really nothing else we have to do. Good question, though.
Just to follow up, what newspaper is that in?
The News Herald.
The Marshfield News Herald?
Yeah, and that's our official city newspaper. I know there've been questions before about whether or not, the one that comes free to your house, the Hub City.
Yeah.
But the official city newspaper has been named for quite a while as the News Herald for publications and official notices and stuff.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Mayor T-Shake?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Reilly?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bryce, for that information again. And thank you for making that happen after a couple of years. Number 9, municipal code amendment request by the city of Marshall to amend section 19.63, required improvements of chapter 19, subdivision and platting. The proposed amendment includes clarifying what improvements are required and who is responsible for costs and the installation of any improvements as part of the subdivision approval process. The amendments also adds requirements for a development agreement and allows exceptions to section 19.63 if approved as part of a development agreement. Presenter, Bryce Hembrook, planner.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So in the staff report was the red line version for all the changes that we were looking to make. So this is the subdivision code, section 1963 for required improvements. This is a section of the code that I don't think you guys probably have looked at too often. We don't usually talk about the subdivision code unless there's like a plat review or a certified survey map, which are kind of far and few for the Plan Commission. So I'm not going to go into all the details in terms of the red line version itself, but I did just want to kind of touch on some of the reasons why staff wanted to propose this amendment. So the first thing is to clearly require that all newly created lots are required to have the specified improvements. So some of those improvements would include utilities for wastewater, regular water, streets, sometimes sidewalks, et cetera. Number two, all the required improvements, duties, and who pays are now spelled out pretty clearly. Third, the city can only, currently the city can only participate financially if a project is located within an active TID district, which is a tax increment district. The proposed amendment requires the developer to install the needed infrastructure as the default position. However, we've added some language to give the city an option to negotiate some financial assistance through the development, assistance in general through the development agreement process. There was inconsistency with who was responsible for paying, there was inconsistency with who was responsible for paying for and installing each of the utilities, so we wanted to try to clean that up. There was some terminology that was cleaned up as well to match, other sections of the code as well as what improvements are actually necessary. And once again, we kind of looked at the developer's agreement and spelled out that a developer's agreement is required for all major subdivisions, which would be a regular plat review. So think of typically 5 or more lots would be reviewed as a major subdivision. And then we also mentioned that a developer's agreement may be required for minor subdivisions, or better known as certified survey maps. That would be on a as-needed basis as determined by, I think, the Public Works Director. And then this would only typically be when public utilities are required for the certified survey maps. And then there would be a provision that these requirements for improvements can be waived by approval from the Board of Public Works and Common Council if part of a developer's agreement. And then finally, if a developer needs assistance, that will need to be spelled out in the developer's agreement. If a developer isn't able to install the necessary utilities, that will also need to be spelled out in a developer's agreement. So this is just a way for us to try to offer some assistance where it makes sense and to allow that ability. That doesn't mean that we're not requiring that the city would have to, participate and add assistance, but it gives us the option to, if it makes sense for, both parties. So that's just kind of the high level background. And then I believe Josh Moritz is in attendance if he has anything else. And then Steve, if you have anything else that you want to chime in and add. But generally that kind of covers the changes that were proposed.
Anything, gentlemen? We will move to public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Anybody would like to make comments in public hearing? Public hearing is now open. Comments in public hearing? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. And now, as a commission, we need a motion to accept or not accept.
I have a question.
Yes, Jake.
Was there specifically an instance recently where this was an issue?
I'll take that, and then Bryce, you can go from there. The part that Bryce mentioned, I think was bullet point number 3, about whether or not we can assist with a development at this point for a residential project. We can only do that right now if it's in a tax increment district. And there have been conversations in the past that a developer was trying to get a new housing subdivision going, and we wanted to maybe help with some of the ancillary costs and stuff like that. Our own ordinance prohibits that, unless they're in a mixed-use TIP district, with very few parcels of land are. So we wanted to give ourselves the freedom that if the council saw fit, to say, you know what, for this project, we'd be willing to do this in order to get it off the ground, they now would be able to do that. The rest of the changes, Bryce, I'll defer to you as to some of the history on some of those.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, and I guess Josh Moritz, was there any specific, when it comes to like the required improvements, utilities, was there any examples of recent ones where we needed to kind of change the code? I can't think of any off the top of my head.
No, it was more just inconsistencies between some of the paragraphs. There was a paragraph spelling out, trying to go by memory, but what was required for sanitary sewer. There was another paragraph for the water uses, all that. There's just to kind of make everything parallel and try to say the same thing.
And I think if I can add, Jake, really what happens sometimes with staff, and I've been a staff member for local government for far too long, when something comes up, when something needs to be changed, that's the moment where people say, as long as we're looking at section 19, is there anything that we want to look at the same time? And then you say, yeah, we haven't looked at this for 10 years or 15 years. So that one piece kind of triggered a broader review. And Josh and Bryce, and I think Josh Miller to a degree as well, found some things that really needed to be corrected.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of these policies that are being reviewed now and well overdue. I will support this one because it does give leeway for the city to do things rather than corralling us into a point.
Yeah.
A development agreement, you can accomplish a lot of things outside of creating a TID district or something. So, yeah, good to see them happening.
Absolutely.
It's a good thing.
So do you want to make a motion to that?
I will make a motion to approve.
And I will second that motion. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Mayor Ortiz-Drake?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Reilly?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yeah.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you all. Item number 10, request by the City of Marshfield for consideration report on the approval of the certified survey map, which includes right-of-way dedications along McMillan Street and St. Joseph's Avenue, parcel 2502603314096. Wow, presented by Bryce Hembrook.
Bingo.
You did that to me, didn't you, Bryce? Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry for making you read that.
That's okay.
So we, staff recently received a certified survey, two certified survey maps for this site somewhat recently. And as a part of the review, staff wanted to require dedication of some of the land to become right-of-way in order to meet one of the requirements in our subdivision code. And so just real quick, while I have the map up, we would be looking to have the applicant dedicate 2 feet along St. Joseph Avenue and 7 feet along McMillan Street, McMillan Street. So on here, you can kind of see, this shows the 7-foot dedication along McMillan and then the 2 feet along St. Joseph's. So anytime that there would be a dedication of right-of-way, the Plan Commission has to review the proposed dedication and review and offer basically just feedback to the Common Council. So there's really no action, but it's just, looking at it and providing feedback. So you guys have seen a couple of these in the past 6 months or so. But the reason why we do these dedications is because we have right-of-way width requirements in our subdivision code. And so, for example, McMillan Street is considered to be a minor arterial road. And in our code, we require that we should have a right-of-way width of 80 feet for a minor arterial road. So if you can see here, I can't tell if you'll be able to see on the screen, but there is 33 feet on both sides of the center line of the road currently, which would be 66 feet. We're trying to get to 80 feet. So if you take 80 feet minus 66, you would get 14 feet. So the reason why we're requesting 7 feet is because we would acquire the 7 feet now on this side. And then across the street, across McMillan Street in the future, if there's ever an opportunity to have 7 more feet dedicated, we would meet that 80-foot requirement. So one of the reasons why we would have this right-of-way expansion is if there's ever a need for future lane expansions or a right or left turn lane that needs to be added, or simply adding, a trail, sidewalks, utilities, et cetera. This allows for us to have the proper utilities, and have, maintain that area along some of our main corridors. Now, St. Joseph's, this one is a 2-foot requirement because it's a collector street. So a collector requires 70 feet of right-of-way. and they are at 66. So once again, acquire 2 feet on this side, and then eventually down the road, we would look to acquire 2 feet on the other side of St. Joseph Avenue. So that's kind of why why we are requiring that. The certified survey map may end up looking a little bit different than what's being proposed because there's been some potential changes that the applicant might make, the applicant of the certified survey map that he might make in the future. But either way, we would be requiring this right-of-way dedication. So I think it's appropriate to just have you guys review it and provide any feedback that you have on it. Once again, this is kind of something that we've been doing more and more through the Plan Commission to meet that statutory requirement listed in 6223. So if there's any questions, please let me know, or please, let us know, and either Josh Moritz or I can kind of chime in. If not, like I said, there's no vote required. However, any comments would be forwarded on to the Common Council.
Yes, Mike.
I'm just curious, when we do this, are we required to purchase it from the landowner, or how does that process work? Anyone?
Yeah.
And Josh, is that?
I'll answer that. Not really. Go ahead, Josh.
We all wondered who's gonna go first.
Yeah, there you go.
No, we do not purchase this right of way. It's just a requirement that it gets dedicated to the city. There are other instances where something else may trigger a dedication. I won't get into them here specifically, but yeah, it's just a requirement. It, like Bryce said, it kind of sets us up for any future development of McMillan or St. Joe's. Typically, as any lot is subdivided or a CSM comes through, that's the time to get that additional dedication. So as you looked up and down McMillan, east and west, some may have dedicated it, some may have not, because there's been no ownership change or survey done on it. So if you were to look at our GIS system, you might see kind of a irregular north boundary, but that would be why.
That makes sense. I appreciate it. The reason they drove it was like some of the walking trails, I know we had to buy area for those, so I didn't know how these were handled.
No, and this really doesn't trigger any improvement necessarily, but it's our right of way for any future projects.
Sure.
Just a platting and subdivision type of thing does give us the opportunity to do that, where if we're proactively trying to acquire right away for a trail or a park or whatever, that's going to end up being on us.
Any other questions, comments? Jake? Oh, I see it. And I like it.
So on that corner there, does Jeff Hill own that land right on the corner?
He does. He owns the land at the northwest corner of McMillan and St. Joe's.
Okay, so it makes sense that there's not a secondary landowner this will affect.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for that information, and thank you for all the extra things that are going on to bring us more to a concise situation. Thank you. On to number 11, discussion regarding potential changes in the Nikolai Industrial Park lots, right-of-way, and TIF districts. Presenter, Bryce Hembrook.
All right, thank you. So this was something that staff thought would be helpful to kind of give a little bit of background information before we talk about this next item, the official map. And then also in the next couple months, there may be some additional items that we'll be discussing that kind of tie into this. So we wanted to just kind of take this time to give you background information. That way you're not just kind of reviewing this blind. So there's a potential project that city staff has been assisting and providing some guidance on a potential certified survey map and concepts for some properties in the Norwood Industrial Park. And so one of the things that we've been doing is trying to identify how the existing roads may someday connect to the vacant land to the east, which is all zoned for, or will be available for industrial development in the future. So one of the things that the city had completed earlier this year, I believe, was a very high-level concept of what the industrial park could look like to the east. And we wanted to include that just to show roughly how we expect that to connect to Norwood Industrial and then eventually down to Yellowstone. So I'll show you a map in a second. So we're not really going to go into detail about the layout. The conceptual map is, like I said, very high level conceptual. I just want to kind of show you how it ties in, because that will lead into my discussion on removal of the 24th Street right-of-way dedication, as well as the official map for the 22nd Street. And it will also tie into a discussion for the TIF amendment. So I know I'm kind of using acronyms and throwing everything out there, so I'll try to explain it here in just a second. So like I said, the main thing I just want to use this to show is that here's 22nd Street. Quality Tank Solutions is right there. And eventually the plan is to try to extend a road to the east here, and then eventually make our way down to Yellowstone Drive to provide another connection point for future industrial properties. So like I said, the lots as they're shown, the roads as they're shown, nothing is set in stone, but eventually our plan is to try to extend down to Yellowstone when possible. And as you can see here, 24th Street is not in the plan based on that high level conceptual. So from that, one of the things that we've been looking at is we were looking at a potential certified survey map. And one of the things that we required years ago on a different certified survey map was for 60 feet to be reserved for a future road off of 24th Street. And then at one point, we were also requiring a right-of-way, or we were trying to acquire 30 feet of the northern strip right here for future right-of-way. And so that was dedicated at one point, and that's currently owned by the city of Marshfield. And then we would be looking to have this dedicated, this part in orange dedicated for a future right-of-way. So our goal is to open this section up from the point here at Nikolai Avenue and 22nd Street to connect to the east side of basically the Norwood Industrial Park boundary, if you will. So we want that as part of our right-of-way, and so that's what the official map will be discussing in the next item. But with that change, we would be looking to remove the reservation of the 60 feet for future right-of-way on 24th, because we don't see a need for it anymore if 22nd will be extending. And then because of that, there is potential where the this building here has, discussed possibly maybe, a building addition, expanding their lot. And so they could, essentially this would become just an area where a building could be, occupying it. Whereas if someone proposed a building here today, they wouldn't be allowed because it's reserved for future right-of-way. So this would help for expanding existing businesses in this area. And one of the other things that was discussed was to basically shift the property line 30 feet over here to kind of create a flush, basically a rectangle for the lot here. And then this lot over here would acquire that 30-foot strip. So with that change, there's a TIF district, and I couldn't find a good map to really illustrate, but there's a TIF district on this property and a different TIF district on this property. And so if they were to acquire that land, we would also have to look to do a TIF amendment, which would go before the Plan Commission and Common Council. So that's another change that may be impacted by these several changes. So like I said, it may not make a lot of sense right now, but before we talk about the official map, I wanted to kind of highlight why we think the 22nd Street makes sense to go with that one. And then eventually we would, look to remove the 24th Street reservation, because we don't see there being a need to extend that. And especially because there is interest to, potentially develop that property otherwise. So with that, that was just kind of a discussion piece. If there's any questions, I try to help answer. If not, I'll be talking about the official map at the next item.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Mike.
Bryce, looking at what do you call it? I guess the one that the writing in red refers to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a right-of-way that's in place now. So where would that property go? To the north or to the south? I mean, who would get that property, or how does that transfer happen?
Oh.
If we get rid of future,
Yeah,
the
in
future
24.
roadway.
Yep,
So that would ultimately, I think with that, the discussion would depend on the certified survey map. So, and Josh Moritz, I think if you want to chime in, I think you had talked to Brad about kind of the thoughts for that property a little bit more in depth than I did. But as of right now, it would be lot 2. It would basically just go back to lot 2. And as I understand it, it's not officially a right of way, but it's designated for a future roadway. So basically that means that they just can't build on that property now, but it's not officially something that the city of Marshfield has as a right of way. So as of right now, if we remove that, it would technically go to lot 2. However, if the lot 1 wants to combine with lot 2, which as far as I understand it is kind of the plan, then it would become all of, that combined lot.
Yeah, Bryce, that's my understanding too, that in fact, that 60-foot reserve for future roadway always has belonged to Lot 2 that was never dedicated to the city for any reason. On the same drawing, you have that orange strip on the north, the same thing, that 30 feet was reserved for future roadway. At some point when these CSMs came in, the north 30 feet of what would be 22nd Street was created as its own unique parcel. It's owned by the city as an outlot. I guess it's not even technically right of way at this point, but it's city owned. So by removing the reservation in orange, or not removing the reservation, but whenever a future CSM would come through, that orange strip would be dedicated to the city, and we would have a free and clear 60-foot strip for 22nd Street. That makes sense.
that makes sense. What about the yellow one? That is also a dedicated area now? Is that correct?
Years ago, that was also reserved for a future Nikolai Avenue to the south. And I forget the timing, but that reservation was lifted, or it may have even been right of way, but at some point that was vacated and went half to the east, half to the west property. And what the developer would like to do it's just south of 24th, west of Nikolai, that piece, he wants to gain that extra 30 feet to maximize his space to build on that lot.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? That was a great description. Obviously, we all understand what's going on, so thank you. Thank you both very much. We'll move on to item 12, request to amend the official map to extend the public right-of-way on East 22nd Street to the east of the intersection of South Nikolai Avenue and East 22nd Street. Presenter, Bryce Hembrook.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So over the past 5 to 10 years, there have been some certified survey maps approved that required reserving portions of the property for future right-of-way. And so as I kind of mentioned, the city of Marshfield owns this strip basically north of this orange line. So it's not technically road right-of-way, but that's the intended purpose. And since the city owns it, we would, use that as right-of-way. And so what we would be looking to do is to, as Josh Moritz had just mentioned, to also add the 30 feet south of that orange line to become right-of-way dedication. So before we require these dedications, it should show on the official map. And so that's something we've been trying to be more proactive on is adding it to the official map beforehand, especially now that we know that this is kind of our plan is to extend to the east of Nikolai Avenue on 22nd rather than 24th. So this is another step in the process of trying to go through the correct way to dedicate this land. So ultimately, we would be looking to have the 60-foot right-of-way strip, which would meet our requirements in the Chapter 19, as well as have a vision triangle set up, similar to across the street here. You can kind of see the line kind of juts out. So that would also be something that we'd be looking to do as well. So this item was introduced to the Common Council on May 13th, and they referred this matter to the Plan Commission. The next step would be to set a public hearing at a future Common Council meeting. And then the Common Council would then, if they choose, they can approve the changes through a resolution. So the recommendation would be to approve amending the official map to extend the public right-of-way on East 22nd Street to the east of the intersection of South Nikolai Avenue and East 22nd Street. Set the public hearing date for Tuesday, June 10th, and to direct staff to prepare a resolution for common council consideration.
I will make a motion to approve.
Second.
Jocelyn seconds. Any other questions, comments?
Can I just?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question based on that discussion and for clarification for the plan commission. So in the future, is that phrase reserved for future roadways something we're going to continue to use, or what you're saying is that's a designation we're probably not going to use anymore? We're just going to look to flat out get right away designated right away? Or have we not talked about that?
I think the plan would be to try to show on the official map where we would ideally have right-of-way expansion, or sometimes there's a need to show right-of-way with expansion as well. So that's really the plan. Now, we can still require them to reserve it for future roadway, which could be helpful. But I think that we really should be going through the official map in order to be clearly meeting state statutes. So that's really the goal. Now, there's obviously times where we're not aware that, that there is a potential to expand a right of way. Let's say that this guy that owns, 60 acres of farmland, and there's potentially development that could occur, and we're not quite aware that we could do a street there. So there may be an opportunity to require that as part of the CSM and then update the official map. But I would say 95% of the time we should go through the official map first, identify where the future right-of-way could be before we require on a CSM or a plat.
Yeah,
hopefully that helped answer the question.
It does, and it would seem to have, if those were on the official city map, it would seem helpful to staff as well when they're meeting with people to be able to show that as an expected future road someday. So yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote.
Yeah. Mayor T-Strake?
Yes.
Councilmember O'Reilly?
Yes.
Commissioner Bernardi?
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you all. Item 15, staff updates.
I really don't have anything except to note that the council is going to hopefully in late summer, early fall, begin work on a strategic plan. It's not specifically like a comprehensive plan where we're talking about land use, but it'll be hopefully setting the stage for where council wants to see the direction in the future in terms of where we put our resources and effort. And I imagine that things like planning and economic development will come up in that conversation. So that'll be coming up here in a few months, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Items for further agendas, future agendas, excuse me. Seeing none, who would like to adjourn the meeting?
And Mayor, could I actually make one comment?
You certainly can.
Yeah, sorry. On the items for future agendas, I do plan on having the items that we took off today with the major
yes, sir.
street
Thank
setback
you.
and the SR6 for the next meeting. If anyone has questions before the meeting and want to kind of discuss, since they're somewhat newer topics or kind of complex, just feel free to reach out to me. And I can try to set up a time to discuss. That way you guys are prepared for the next meeting, because I know we've been kind of talking about the SR6 district for a while now. So if you have any additional questions prior to further discussion, just please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. And I apologize, I should have realized that myself.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. And who would like to adjourn the meeting this evening?
I move to adjourn.
Mr. Bernardi, and second?
Second.
Jocelyn? We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.